Hey, what's going on, guys? My name's Griffin, and I'm a filmmaker based out of Orange County, California. And today we're going to be talking about the Canon C70 RAW update. So actually, Canon was kind enough to send me out the RAW firmware update a couple weeks early, and the last few weeks I've actually been testing it out on a few paid shoots and a few test shoots. So today what I really want to do is show you just this test shoot that I did with my friend J-Ball over at the boxing studio. I wanted to share with you some tests that I did with the C70, and I just used one camera for this test because it was in controlled lighting. And basically what I did is I tested the XF-AVC, the RAW low bit rate, and the RAW high bit rate. So the RAW update has two new modes. So it's RAW ST and RAW LT. So ST is RAW standard quality, RAW LT is like lower quality, I guess. So I'll show you some tests right now, and a little bit of a spoiler alert. You're really gonna wanna stick around for the third test that I do, because I'm gonna be honest, it actually blew me away. It was not at all what I was expecting. So first test here is an indoor setting. I wanted to push the ISO to basically the highest ISO that I would typically shoot at, which is 3200. And the first setting, it's 3200, 5.6, and the settings are matched equally in every single test. First up is the XF-AVC. Now here's the RAW LT. And here's the RAW ST. So in this test, the first thing that stood out to me is there's a little bit more noise in the RAW, which is totally to be expected. But what I did notice is there's also a little bit more color information. So that's it's pretty typical of RAW. I talked about it when I compared the C70 versus the Komodo. When you're working with RAW codecs, it's not like, one camera's good, one camera's bad if it has noise reduction built in. Just something that's universal for basically every RAW format out there is there's no noise reduction built in. So if you're planning to just shoot, slap a LUT on it, deliver to the client, XF-AVC is probably going to be the way to go if you're shooting more in like a dock setting. You're pumping up the high ISO, 3200, 6400. I would personally choose XF-AVC. If you have the chance to control things in post-production a little bit more, I would always choose RAW. Now between the RAW low bit rate, the LT, and the high bit rate, the ST, I didn't really see much of a difference. So for me personally, I would probably always choose the LT just based on the fact that it's going to be smaller file sizes. So for the second test, what I wanted to do is basically test highlight latitude and overexposure recovery. So what I did is I basically put J-Ball here. There's an Aperture 600D at full output with a 60-inch dome, and then this really bright window behind the white wall further off in the distance. So it's a good way to test the highlight area and what's clipping, what's not clipping. So here's the XF-AVC, and you'll notice that the wall clips in the back. And when I go to recover that, you can see the midtones do a pretty good job of being recovered, but what clips at the sensor level is clipped. And that's something I knew going into it, but I just kind of want to demonstrate it for the test. In the second test, here's the RAW LT. Now, one thing I noticed when I try to recover this clip is how easy it is to recover all that mid-tone information. So basically, if it doesn't clip, and you'll know if it's going to clip when you look at your waveform, because it'll shelf off right at the top. But if it doesn't clip, that basically means with the RAW codec, it's going to be really easy to recover. So that's really nice, and it's kind of like, I did the comparison against the Pocket 6K and the Komodo. That was one thing that I always liked about the cameras, is having the ability to shoot in RAW and easily recover anything that's maybe 2 stops or 3 stops overexposed. So now that the C70 has that, that's a huge thing. And for the third clip, here's the RAW ST, which is the standard quality. No surprises here. It looks basically identical to the LT. And again, I would just choose the RAW LT over the ST for the vast majority of circumstances, because I didn't notice much of a difference between the two. In this third test, what I wanted to do was basically expose for outside and ignore the exposure on the inside. So generally I'm probably going to expose somewhere in the middle. If I have a really bright exterior and then I have a subject on the inside, I probably want to expose somewhere in the middle. But what I kind of want to do is just completely expose for outside and underexpose my subject by about 2 stops. And then try to pull it in post-production, so pull up the exposure so we can see what's there in the shadows, and also notice what's the noise structure in the shadows. So this is where the test got really cool for me. Generally speaking, like I said earlier, with RAW, you're gonna have noisier shadows and things like that. So here's the first test with the XF-AVC. And when I pull that exposure up, I do think it looks really good. Now, take note of the skin specifically. There's a bit more magenta here. And now here's the raw LT. This is when I literally saw the footage and I was like, wow, that looks like noticeably different. Now you pull it up, especially the shadow part on his jawline there, you'll really notice how clean the shadows are. And this is with no noise reduction. And the second thing I really noticed is how the skin doesn't break apart at all. It really looks kind of high end, you could say. It reminds me of Arri cameras, the noise structure and the noise patterns. It's probably not going to come through on YouTube, but it looks really, really nice, and it looks super high quality. Like, it really honestly blew me away how good the image quality was. And you'll notice if you look at the vector scope, see how the colors get wider there? That shows there's actually more color detail being captured, which you would expect because it's 12-bit RAW. But it's just really cool that Canon gave this update for free. And finally, here's the RAW ST. Again, on this one, perhaps there's slightly less noise, but it's such a little difference that I don't think I'd ever really use that mode. I think I'll always use the raw LT. But for me, just to kind of summarize my overall thoughts, I'm super, super happy that Canon gave this free update, and I'm just kind of blown away. It's like I had a C200 forever, and everybody's always talking about, like, oh, I wish the C200 would get 10-bit. And it's like, of course, it never happened, but this feels like what everybody was wanting when the camera came out. I had a few friends message me, and they were like, dude, do you think the C70 is going to get the raw update, like the rumor sites are talking about? I'm like, dude, no way. Like it records to SD cards. Like, I don't even think that's possible. But the fact that we got a raw update to SD cards, but also even more importantly, the fact that you could choose your bitrate, which is a lot like RED cameras. And up until this point, there haven't been, I think actually the 1DX Mark III and potentially the R3 have a lower bitrate raw, but none of the cinema line, like even the C500 Mark II that I'm recording on right now, when you record raw, it's like you get this full beast mode, but you don't get a lower bitrate option, which makes it not so much an everyday codec. Whereas now for me, I think I'm probably just going to exclusively record in the C70 and raw when I'm using that camera. It's just such a cool update, and I'm so stoked that we were able to get that. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comment section. I'll really do my best at getting back to all you guys. And then another thing, I'm going to try to be a little bit more consistent on here on my channel. Just kind of had a lot of stuff going on recently, and also some other work and a few big spec projects I've been working on. So that's kind of why I haven't really been posting on here. But I didn't forget about any of you, and I'm super excited to share some more stuff. I do have a really cool spec project that we shot with the C70 and RAW coming up next week. So keep an eye for that one. We'll do a little behind the scenes and a little bit of a breakdown. So hopefully you enjoy this type of content. If you like it and you found it valuable, consider hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.